This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.
Let's move on to the Takehiro Tomiyasu. Now, he's a player who is out for the end of last season. And we often talk about Saliba's injury being, game-changing, but in the same game, Tomiyasu was taken out the first 20 minutes. It was decisive, and if he had stayed fit, the potential of Tomiyasu playing as a right back, as a left back, allowing Ben White to play central, it would have been a game-changer. Now, he's 24 years of age, which I was surprised to hear. It feels like he's a little bit older. He is still very young. The concern, of course, is about his fitness and reliability. But in terms of his profile, I saw his heat map, and it was very equally spaced out on the left and right-hand side. So clearly, Mikel Arteta sees him as a very versatile, almost Swiss Army knife profile. George, how can Tomiyasu fit into the Arsenal squad next season, granted he's fit?
Look, I think there's been a lot of PTSD fears from fitness in general from fans. Like, people write off players because of fitness. And at the same hand, you don't ignore it. I mean, it's definitely something to be concerned about. It's not, something that you ignore completely. But as a player, let's look at Tomiyasu, right? Like, what is he as a profile? I think he is somebody that has no passing angle bias. He's somebody that is really quite ambipedal, so he can play with both feet. Like, he's equally strong receiving or making short passes with both feet. I think he's a very competent defender. In fact, I think 1v1, he is our best 1v1 defender. Now, the one things that I think I look at Tomiyasu and maybe I'd like to see a little bit more of is, I think, given his height and his dual competency, I want him to be more dominant aerially than he is. But he is quite dominant in the duels. It's just, does he have the final third ability to be variable in his passing, to provide the dynamic overlap that we've seen Ben White do? Is he that type of fullback? Not really. I mean, some of his best performances, even this season, when you kind of have a look at it with Liverpool and what he did a job on Mohamed Salah, right? Like, what do you see as that potential defender? For me, he's a finisher sub, quote and unquote. I kind of believe that the squad and the depth of the squad is going to be done with specific roles. So you're not going to be looking at players to basically be one position only. So Ben White will not always be a right back. He will not always be a center back guaranteed. Tomiyasu, same kind of thing. Like, he won't always be a left back or a right back. He will create kind of defensive versatility. I see him very much in the sense of a Nathan Ake that, look, Nathan Ake became a starting spot right now, but in theory, Pep the year before had viewed him as depth, right? I mean, things change, season change, and rules change, but fundamentally, I look at Tomiyasu as just brilliant depth across the back line. He offers me tons of versatility at center back, something that I don't think people realize is, for Japan, he plays as left center back. And what we haven't seen is him being able to do that, and he carries into midfield quite well. So when I start to look at it, for me, his frame and what his best attributes are in build-up, in our third, as well as defensively in a block. For me, that screams center back. Like, I looked at him and I called him, when we first signed him, as a bridge right back that will be a center back in the future. He almost screams to me a 28-year-old right back. And what I mean by that is somebody who, kind of maybe will operate on the inside, maybe a little bit inverted if he plays right back, but he doesn't provide that dynamism. And I just think technically he has the ability to create passing lanes, but I just don't see him, when he's higher up the pitch, make consistently good enough decisions that are variable. Ben White has a lot more to his arsenal and his crossing ability than I see with Tomiyasu. So for me, he just offers that versatility, and I don't understand why people write him off just because he's had an injury. He is still one of our best 1v1 defenders. He's cheap. He's young. He has another 2 contracts probably left in him. I don't know why you would want to sell that type of player. Surely you would cut the weeds on your Cedrics of the squad before you're looking at a Tomiyasu to move on. And then from there you can build, right? Like, I don't understand this idea of cutting what will be, regardless of what you think of Tomiyasu, which I don't think he's a starting capable player for us, but he doesn't need to be. Like, I don't understand why you have to move somebody on who offers you that level of versatile depth. And when you're looking at a bench and you've got a player that can be adept at fullback, center back, both sides of the pitch, that's worth its weight in gold. I mean, how many times have we seen, Cesar Azpilicueta rinsed throughout his career in different positions and able to fill in for Chelsea in different areas? I see Tomiyasu as a very similar type of player, a versatile depth piece, and somebody that can offer us a little bit going, I think going forward, he'll be more of a center back, in my opinion. If I had to nail down a position, I think of him as center back depth. personally. But again, you don't have to isolate him to that. He's fullback and center back depth, cheap. What does he cost to buy on the market right now? 30, 35 million pounds? I mean, the hybrids that we're looking at, Simican and all the kind of reports, in general, place a 35 to 40 million pound value. We bought him for what, 17? Was it 18? Something around there. So yeah, I see no reason to let loose.
The way I look at it is, you're right. Even you could Pep Guardiola and Mikel Arteta, the whole four centre backs type of back four, the good defensive 1v1 duel winners. I've got no concerns about Tomiyasu's profile. I think, in fact, it is very useful to have. The concern that I think a lot of Arsenal fans do have is the reliability, because as we saw in the end of last season, it's not like that was Tomiyasu's first ever injury. He's had a lot of before that, and he's been muscular problems as well. So that's why I think Arsenal have to be careful, because when you're in the Champions League next season, you're in the latter stages, you need to have players reliably fit and available. And with Tomiyasu being a backup player, it's very important for him to be then available as a backup. And the fact that he wasn't this year, I think it was detrimental. And I can see why Arsenal fans have the PTSD. Listen, Jack Wilshere, Abu Diaby, we've been through a lot of pain. Some of really good profiles, but just weren't fit and available. So I can understand why Arsenal fans have the concerns. Alex, what do you make of Takehiro Tomiyasu?
Was that your Fabrizio?
No, it wasn't. I felt like saying it that way.
A little flair.
Je ne sais quoi. Look, I think George summed it up really well. I think I'd have a look at the career arcs of the likes of Nathan Ake, at the likes of Manuel Akanji, at the likes of John Stones. Just had a look at Ake's injury history. And until this season, he'd had hamstring issues galore. He had hamstring issues at Chelsea, hamstring issues at Bournemouth. He's had hamstring issues in 2021. He had another hamstring issue this season. I think this idea that we want to chuck people out straight away because they've got injury issues, I understand that it's a concern, and down the road, if we had a sort of toss up between two options, and one was and they were the exact same profile, and one had injury issues, of course you go with someone who doesn't. But I think what Tomiyasu offers you, and again, of course, if he can stay fit, is so exciting, and he can be defensive depth across the back line. I think as you guys have outlined, his profile is really, really strong. And I have a look at the Champions League final, for example. Kyle Walker didn't start because they were going to basically play a 3-1 in sort of build-up, and that was clearly the plan. And if I was Pep, I'd want a Kanji on the right-hand side of the defence rather than Walker, and that's the situation. And there's going to be other games where Kyle Walker plays at right-back because they're playing against Vinicius. And once we have the full stable of defenders, we could start to be like, okay, in this game, probably 80% of games, we keep the same centre-back pairing, or maybe 90% of games, and the fullbacks can switch out, or maybe we play this person this time because we want to play more of a 2-4 or whatever. And I think Tomiyasu can give you so many options in so many different versions of build-up and in so many different versions of how you're trying to play, that he is a very exciting profile in that sense that I'm very willing to give time. As I say, there is if we're still having the same conversations in 2 seasons' time, we have to speak about it. But Tomiyasu, realistically, I've also looked at his injury history. Actually, in the last couple of seasons, the only recurring injury he's had is a calf problem that he had at Bologna and then at Arsenal. Otherwise he's had different injuries. So I think he's actually been unlucky. I wouldn't say he's necessarily injury prone.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. And talking about full-backs, Arsenal are targeting a right-back, and maybe a left-back profile as well if Tierney is to depart. But there is a name that has arrived that Arsenal fans have been surprised with, and they've had their own thoughts about it, as they always do. Leicester City's Timothy Castagne, Belgium international, I believe 27 years of age, 3 years of Premier League experience. He used to play for Atalanta as well, able to play on the left and right hand sides. It was a surprise link, but he is going to be available because Leicester have been relegated, and I think he is a Premier League standard player. But can he play for Arsenal, George? Is he a calibre that Arsenal should be targeting? And actually, what do you make of the rumours in the first place?
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.